Now a few more games into the season, so let's review our Premier League predictions for the season. Right now we can see how the table is looking with Arsenal on top of the table on 16 points. Liverpool now have 2 losses behind them, so does City, who lost them first 2 in early on in the season. Crystal Palace with that 1 loss, but every team has had a loss now. So let's get into talking about what my predictions are for the rest of the time. Forest, I feel like Forest get a few goals, but Chelsea, mate, Maresca's always had Ange's system in a lock down there. Sunderland beating Wolves, I think that will be fine there. I think Newcastle have been pretty solid at the back, to be fair. I'm going to go 1-1. I've been thinking Brighton will win that one, but the more I think about how Newcastle have been pretty together at the back, I feel like we'll go with that one. 2-2 between Palace and Bournemouth, the 2 pretty inseparable teams. Burnley beating Leeds, I still feel like will happen. I think City is still going to beat Everton. I think Fulham are going to try and upset Arsenal, but Arsenal aren't good enough. Are too good to beat Fulham there. Spurs Spurs drawing with Villa. Spurs haven't been great at home, and I still think United lose that one. Like, I have the hope, but I'm not gonna be too delusional about things, guys. I'm not gonna be too delusional. West Ham to beat Brentford in that game as well. I think that's a vital point for West Ham there. But then Leeds beating West Ham 2-1. Chelsea at 4 past Sunderland. Newcastle putting a few past Fulham and having a good time there. United finally ending their curses against Brighton. Liverpool getting back to winning ways. Just getting back on the winning ways. I think the United game can take them there. And a 2-0 win for Bournemouth against Forest. Villa getting beaten by City. And then Arsenal beating Palace. Another loss for Palace for the year. I mean, it's a game where it's a difficult game for them to get a result in. Wolves beating Burnley, and then Everton holding Spurs to a 0-0 draw. So we're game week 10, we'll calculate game week 10 and talk about where we're at there. Brighton beating Leeds, Palace beating Brentford, Burnley getting beaten by Arsenal, Fulham beating Wolves, Forest and United drawing, just disappointing. Spurs and Chelsea drawing, disappointing for both teams really, that as they're trying to push on. Liverpool beating Villa, West Ham getting a draw out of Newcastle, City beating Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth are a good team, but City is still that step above. We'll go 3-2 actually. And then Sunderland getting a 1-0 win over Everton. Calculate the table now, and we can see Sunderland still in 7th place, doing really well for themselves. 5 wins from 10 is great for them. Arsenal's still top of the table, and Liverpool still sat in 2nd, just a point behind them. City and Chelsea also make up the rest of the top 4. United now sat in 10th, and the relegation zone is currently Burnley, Forest and Wolves, who have not had a great start to the season. Spurs beating United at home there. Everton was beating Fulham as well. West Ham beating Burnley, and I see Sunderland getting beaten by Arsenal. Getting a goal in there though. I think they've been strong at home. Chelsea getting a clean sheet against Wolves, and Villa beating Bournemouth 1-0. Just edging the result over them. Because sometimes Bournemouth's attack is really exciting, but then sometimes it does nothing for us. 2-0 for Crystal Palace there, and then Brentford holding Newcastle to a 1-1 draw, whilst Forest beat Leeds and get back on their winning ways. And then City beating Liverpool, which is big for them, and is another loss for Liverpool, which could it put them back down that rabbit hole. Burnley holding Chelsea to a draw. I feel like sometimes Chelsea just aren't up to the standard. And then Bournemouth beating West Ham, Brighton beating Brentford, Fulham beating Sunderland with a clean sheet, and Liverpool, this is a game that they actually lost last year 1-0, and then this year I'm going to go 1-0 to Liverpool, keeping it close still. It's going to be a tough fight. Wolves getting a draw with Palace. I think Newcastle getting a draw with City. I think Leeds drawing with Villa. Arsenal just beating Spurs, and United beating Everton. I think that is fair. We're calculating game week 15 again. Sunderland getting a draw out of Bournemouth. A few draws happening there. Brentford though beating Burnley. City putting a few past Leeds. Everton holding Newcastle to a 1-1 draw. Spurs beating Fulham. Palace beating United, keeping a clean sheet as well while they do so. Villa beating Wolves. Forest beating Brighton. I think they get the wins in there. West Ham getting beat by Liverpool, and then Chelsea holding Arsenal to a draw, getting some goals in there for themselves. Bournemouth beating Everton. See Brighton beating Villa. Arsenal beating Brentford. Burnley holding Palace to a draw. Getting another draw out of Palace is good for Burnley there. Fulham getting beat by City. Liverpool beating Sunderland. I think they'll do a bit more than that actually. Leeds giving Chelsea a tough time. Giving Chelsea a real tough time there. United beating West Ham. Newcastle beating Spurs, and then Wolves with a 2-1 win over Forest. It's big for them. And Bournemouth with a massive win this is over Chelsea. Villa getting a draw out of Arsenal. Brighton beating Wolves. Everton drawing with Forest there. Fulham drawing with Palace. Leeds getting beat by Liverpool. City beating Sunderland. And then Newcastle absolutely smashing up Burnley. Just destroying the house basically there. Spurs beating Brentford, and then United beating Wolves. Calculated table now after a few more games, and Bournemouth actually sitting to the top 4 now on 28 points, 8 points off the top of the table there, which is Arsenal sat on 36 points, and Liverpool also sat on 36 points. West Ham, Wolves and Burnley make up the relegation zone. 9 points for Wolves and Burnley is not good for them, whilst West Ham, Brentford, Leeds, Forest all sit pretty low. Sunderland have dropped a bit further now, down to 15th, all the way from 7th is, you know, it's a drop off that you kind of expect to happen. But then, and then you have a bit of a rise with an upset there, and I think Palace managed to get a win over City as well. Actually, I think they'll draw that one. And I think Arsenal beating Wolves, yeah, is keeping up the ground that they need. Brentford beating Leeds. I think Burnley getting a shotgun over Fulham there. Chelsea and Everton in a 1-1 draw at this point at Stamford Bridge. Liverpool beating Brighton. United drawing with Bournemouth. Forest drawing with Spurs. Ange knows how to break that team apart. And West Ham and Villa in a 0-0 draw. Bournemouth beating Burnley back onto the week there, and Villa beating United. Brighton beating Sunderland. Everton holding Arsenal to a 0-0 draw. Arsenal managed to just sneak that 1-0 win. Stuff that's, you know, doing that this season. Fulham beating Forest. Leeds drawing with Palace. City beating West Ham. Newcastle beating Chelsea. Spurs beating Liverpool was big one, that for Spurs. It's not going to go down too well with Spurs fans. And then Wolves beating Brentford. And then we're going to see Sunderland beating Leeds. We're going to see Palace beating Spurs. Arsenal beating Brighton, another clean sheet for them there, and then Brentford drawing with Bournemouth, whilst Burnley get 1-0 win over Everton, and then Chelsea beating Villa. We're going to see Liverpool put 4 past Wolves. United draw with Newcastle. Forest try and just win at City, but nothing too exciting. And then West Ham beating Fulham, and you get into game week 19. We're halfway through the season now at this point. We'll see where we get with teams. Palace ending the year well there. Arsenal ending the year well. Brentford drawing with Thomas Frank. Newcastle getting a win to, you know, do well for the end of the season. Chelsea getting a bit of revenge on that Bournemouth loss. Liverpool putting a few past Leeds and ending the year well on their terms. United ending the year well on their terms as well. Forest beating Everton, and then West Ham with a win over Brighton. We'll calculate the table now. Arsenal top of the table on 48 points. Still only 1 loss on the record. City now in second on 45. Jumping with Liverpool on 45. And a big gap into the 4th place there, which is Chelsea, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth all on 33 points. Bit of goal difference separating them right now. United on 28 points down there. In 9th, Brighton in 10th, and then Sunderland sat in 11th right now on 24 points. With 7 wins on the board so far, it's doing really well for themselves. Wolves bottom of the table on 12 points, while Leeds sit on 13 and Burnley sit on 15. No teams are like Derby this year. Brentford is still pretty low as well. Forest down there. West Ham still down there. Fulham surprisingly down there, and Everton also on 18 points, despite having 9 losses on the board for them. So we'll keep on going through and see where teams head, as Bournemouth start the year really well with a win over Arsenal, make it 2-1. Villa start the year well with a win over Forest, and Brighton get off to a really good start to the year with a 5-0 win over Burnley, whilst Everton get a 2-0 win over Brentford, and that massively helps them. Fulham get a draw at Liverpool, whilst Leeds get smacked up by United, and City smack up Chelsea, furthering their gap there. Newcastle beating Palace. Spurs putting 4 past Sunderland. Putting 2 past Sunderland. And then Wolves getting a win over West Ham. It's big for them. Bournemouth with a clean sheet at home there against Spurs, whilst doing a double as well over Spurs, that is. Crystal Palace then beat Villa with a clean sheet. Arsenal beating Liverpool is huge for them. Brentford getting 2-1 over Sunderland. Burnley getting beaten by United. Everton drawing with Wolves. Fulham drawing with Chelsea. City beating Brighton for me there, and then Newcastle beating Leeds. Just a 2-0 win. Well, actually not winning 4-1 for that game. Mike Longstaff scoring. West Ham beating Forest is taking West Ham further away from relegation. That's what they need to see. Sunderland drawing with Palace. We're going to see Villa beating Everton. We're going to see Brighton beating Bournemouth. Chelsea beating Brentford. Liverpool putting 5 past Burnley. Leeds beating Fulham. United drawing with City. Forest getting beaten by Arsenal, and then Spurs winning that one, whilst Wolves get beat by Newcastle as well. We'll calculate in this game when there's 15 games left. Bournemouth a 2-0 win over Liverpool. Liverpool not performing like they need to do. Palace beating Chelsea, whilst Arsenal beat United in a bit more of a comfortable fashion. And Brentford and Forest draw. Burnley and Spurs in a 0-0 draw. Everton and Leeds in a 0-0 draw. It's going to be one of the boring weekends because Fulham and Brighton in a 1-1 draw. City putting 4 past Wolves again. Newcastle putting 5 past Villa. So a bit more exciting on the hopefully what would be a Sunday. And then West Ham and Sunderland drawing 2-2. So 15 games left now. And Arsenal top of the table on 57 points. Doing really well for themselves. Only 2 losses on the board. And then City sat on 55, only 2 losses, and a bit more of a gap there. Newcastle now find themselves in the top 4, whilst Bournemouth, Palace, Spurs, Chelsea have all dropped off a bit. United down a positive goal difference, only 30 goals conceded a year, which we'll take for how past years have been. Villa are rising back up the table at this point. Sunderland doing well for themselves. Everton doing okay as well. Burnley now bottom of the table with Wolves and them on 16 points and Leeds on 17 points. I said it's going to get exciting as we get towards the end of the season here. As Sunderland start this next game with a well-off win there. Villa beating Brentford. Brighton beating Everton is not good for Everton's cause either. Chelsea putting 4 past West Ham, whilst Liverpool put 3 past Newcastle, giving another loss to Newcastle. Leeds, try and do something against Arsenal, but it's nothing much there. United beating Fulham 1-0. Forest drawing with Palace. You're going to see Spurs beating City. It's what they do. Wolves beating Bournemouth 1-0 is a big one for Wolves. That is trying to get them out of the relegation zone. The next week, Bournemouth beat Villa, whilst Brighton take a win over Palace, which is a draw over Palace. A draw with Palace, sorry. Arsenal beating Sunderland. You'll see Burnley with a 1-0 win over West Ham. It's going to help them out. Fulham beating Everton. Liverpool drawing with City. You see Leeds beating Forest is big for them as well. United finally ending their woes against Spurs with a win there, and then Newcastle beating Brentford, whilst Chelsea put 3 past Wolves again. Liverpool winning that one. Brighton beating Bournemouth, beating Brighton. Aston Villa beating Brighton. There we go. Got on the right side there. Palace beating Burnley. Brentford trying to beat Arsenal, but no luck. Leeds getting beat by Chelsea. Everton with a 2-1 win over Bournemouth is huge for them. Oh, not 4-9, Jesus Christ, 4-0. And then Forest and Wolves drawing. Spurs and Newcastle drawing, whilst West Ham get beat by United. So it's going well for them. It is going well. Villa beating Leeds there. We're going to see Crystal Palace playing against Wolves with a 2-0 win there. Brentford with a 1-1 draw with Brighton. Chelsea beating Burnley. Everton drawing with United. 1-1 between Everton and United there. City beating Newcastle. A bit of a fight back though, but not enough. Whilst Liverpool put a few past Forest there. And then Spurs actually get a win over Arsenal as they try and stop Arsenal from the league to do them best. And West Ham draw with Bournemouth. We've got one more game we can calculate again into game week 28 when there is 10 games left. Brighton beating Forest there. Arsenal beating Chelsea without too much of a worry about it. Burnley drawing Brentford. We're going to see Fulham beating Spurs. We're going to see Liverpool beating West Ham. And then City beating Leeds. Whilst United draw with Crystal Palace and Newcastle beat Everton. And then Wolves get a win over Villa is big for them with 10 games left, guys. Wolves now outside the relegation zone. Forest, Leeds and Burnley all on 20 points, all inside the relegation zone right now. Forest with the least wins for the season. It's really bad for them. United now sat in 8th, just above Spurs, who were fighting for promotion spots at one point, in Champions League spots at one point. Newcastle, Chelsea and Palace and Bournemouth all on 49 points. Way off the top, where it's Liverpool, City and Arsenal all sat nice and perched at the top. United actually 3 points off a Champions League place because of how the draw has come. Palace, 13 draws, currently sat on doing well for themselves. Bournemouth beating Brentford. We're going to see Villa get a 1-1 over Chelsea, just doing what they need to do. Brighton have upset Arsenal in the past. I think they're getting upset there as well. Everton beating Burnley. Fulham beating West Ham. We're going to see Leeds beating Sunderland is a big win for them, that is. City beating Forest. No negatives there. Newcastle beating United, and then Spurs drawing with Palace, whilst Wolves draw with Liverpool, which is it's a Diego Jota derby there. Sunderland beating Brighton. We're going to see Palace beating Leeds in a really, really exciting game at Selhurst Park there. Everton getting beat by Arsenal. Brentford beating Wolves. Burnley with a 1-1 draw in Bournemouth. Chelsea beating Newcastle is big for the Champions League race there. Liverpool beating Spurs. We're going to see United actually beat Villa there. Forest beating Fulham, and then West Ham getting beat by City. We'll calculate again in game week 33 when there's 5 games left. Villa winning against West Ham there. Brighton upsetting Liverpool towards the end of the season. Everton and Chelsea in a 0-0 draw. Fulham beating Burnley. We're going to see Leeds beating Brentford. City beating Palace, another Palace loss for the year there. Sunderland getting pummeled there by Newcastle. A little bit of anger let out for the early result. Spurs win that one against Forest, and then Arsenal just beating Wolves. Just you know what, Madueke actually hates Wolves, doesn't he? 4-1. Sunderland with a shock 1-0 win over Spurs, whilst Crystal Palace beat Newcastle, and Arsenal draw Bournemouth at the Emirates. Brentford then get 2-1 win over Everton. Burnley with a 0-0 draw with Brighton. Chelsea beating City is big for the title race towards the end of the season here. United putting 4 past Leeds. Forest getting a draw with Villa, and then West Ham beating Wolves. Game week 33 now. There's 5 games left after this one. As Villa beat Sunderland, Crystal Palace beating West Ham, Brentford trying to escape further, Chelsea beating United, Everton with a 0-0 draw with Liverpool, Leeds beating Wolves, City beating Arsenal. This is exciting for 5 games left of the season. This will be a tight one now. Newcastle beating Bournemouth, Forest and Burnley drawing 1-1, and then Spurs beating Brighton. 5 games left, sitting out top of the table on 77 points. Arsenal on 77 points, joint with them. It's all down to goal difference now, and Haaland's not going to let that slip, is he? Liverpool sat on 70 points, while Chelsea sit 11 points away on 59 points, equal with Palace, whilst Newcastle are a point behind. Bournemouth aren't far behind either. Spurs and United are close, but not too close right now. Villa on 47 points have risen from the ashes to finish in 10th right now, while Brighton on 45 points and a bit of a gap to Sunderland on 38, but they should be safe with 5 games left. They need 1 win to be safe. Forest, Wolves and Burnley can all still drag someone down with them all the way up to 38 points, so that right there is Sunderland could still be dragged down to bottom of the table if they lose all 5 games. Sunderland with a minus 24 goal difference as well, 17 losses on the board. It's not looking good for them. Forest on 18 losses. They've got a lot of draws right now is what's keeping them where they are. Let's get it going and see where we end up as Bournemouth beat Leeds. Sunderland with a 1-1 draw with Forest. They get 1 step closer to safety. 1 step closer to safety for Sunderland there. Brighton in a 2-2 draw with Chelsea. Arsenal beating Newcastle. Arsenal drawing with Newcastle. Burnley just getting beat by City there. City continue to push up that goal difference. Fulham beating Villa. We're going to see Liverpool drawing with Palace. We're going to see United beating Brentford. West Ham beating Everton is big for them, and then Wolves beating Spurs is all trying to get out now. Bournemouth drawing with Palace. We're going to see Villa beating Spurs. Arsenal beating Fulham. Brentford drawing with West Ham. Chelsea beating Forest is putting Forest into an abyss. Everton and City drawing 0-0, while Leeds beat Burnley to try and get out. United draw 1-1 with Liverpool. Newcastle beating Brighton to try and help themselves out, and then Wolves beating Sunderland. Sunderland getting a 1-1 draw at United, and that should be enough. That should be enough to see him survive the league. Brighton drawing. No, Brighton beating Wolves. It's not good for Wolves, wasn't. Brighton get drawing that game actually. Palace beating Everton could condemn Everton to worse fears. Burnley and Villa draw, whilst Fulham get beat by Bournemouth there 2-0. Yeah. Liverpool beating Chelsea is going to condemn Chelsea to some bad times there. City beating Brentford. Forest 1-1 draw with Newcastle. Spurs beating Leeds, and then Arsenal trying to push up some goal difference for a 5-0 win there against West Ham. Bournemouth with a 2-1 win over City in the second to last week there is huge. Villa upsetting Liverpool as well. Arsenal pushing up that goal difference as much as they can. Brentford then draw with Palace. We're going to see Spurs getting beat by Chelsea, Everton beating Sunderland, Leeds beating Brighton as they try and get out, United beating Forest, Newcastle beating West Ham, and then Wolves beating Fulham. We're going to calculate the table with 1 game left, guys. With 1 game left, West Ham could drag Brentford down instead of them. Currently, Burnley are out, Forest are out, but West Ham could have. I mean, the goal difference isn't like West Ham are going down like I had at the start of the season. Wolves survive, Leeds survive, Brentford survive, Fulham survive, Everton survive, Sunderland definitely survive. You know, nice sat in 12th there, actually doing well for themselves that year. United sat in 8th, and it's where they're going to finish the season as well. Palace on 65 points could get into the top 4. Bournemouth currently sat there. It's going to be a last day ditch for it. Arsenal top of the table right now. All they need is a point. Last day of the season, and Sunderland get beat by Chelsea. Brighton beat United. Palace and Arsenal draw, whilst Burnley beat Wolves. In, you know, it's a last hurrah there. Fulham getting beat by Newcastle. Liverpool beating Brentford after a long year. City, we'll 5-1, make it a bit exciting. City beating Villa on the last day, whilst Forest and Bournemouth draw. Actually, not enough to help them survive. Spurs beating Everton, and then West Ham beat Leeds on the last day. Calculate the table. Newcastle and Chelsea get Champions League spots, while Bournemouth and Crystal Palace get the Europa League spots, and United are subjected to a Conference League place. Arsenal win the league by a point with 88 goals scored, 88 points gained. City had the better goal difference throughout the year, 92 goals scored and only 29 conceded is fantastic, to be fair. United ended the season on a positive goal difference, just ahead of Spurs there, and Villa sat on 54 points in 10th. They'll take that for how they started the season. I think 15 wins for how they started the season is great. Burnley do get relegated, but with a respectable 27 points. Forest also get relegated on 28 points. I think decision making over the season is what's setting them there. West Ham then also get relegated on 33 points, level on points with Brentford, but a negative 10 more goal difference. 10 more goals throughout the season is what sends them down. The most goals conceded in the league actually was Leeds throughout the whole year, conceded 83 goals but managed to survive thanks to just vital wins at home, making their home ground a tough place to go. Same with Everton, making, only 8 wins for Everton is pretty crazy there. Maybe have done them a bit dirty with 12 draws and 18 losses. But some of them with 20 losses, when Nottingham Forest get relegated with only 20 losses as well is crazy, while Sunderland sat in 12th. Shows what difference a win makes. 10 points away from them is Brighton sat in 11th, who made a fight but could not get in the top half, because Villa finished on the top half. Yeah, that is the updated predictions, guys. It's a bit crazy now. See Bournemouth doing really well for themselves there. I usually hype Bournemouth up a bit too much more than they need to be, but that is predictions. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, cheers guys.